Physics doesn't describe reality. I know that sounds wrong, maybe even offensive, but stay with me, because that's not a criticism of physics. It's the most honest thing I can tell you about it. And the strange part, physicists have always known this. We just never made it the headline. Here's the assumption almost everyone carries around, that when physics gives you an equation or a model or a theory, it's telling you what reality is. What's actually there? What's really happening underneath everything you can see and touch? That's not what physics claims to do. Feynman was blunt about this in the way he was blunt about most things. Physics gives you rules that work. It gives you predictive machinery, tools that let you calculate what will happen with extraordinary precision. What it doesn't give you is a window into what's actually there. The map is not the territory, and physics from the very beginning has only ever been drawing maps. The warning was always in the fine print. Nobody told you to read it. You felt this before. I'd bet on it. You were maybe 12 or 15 or 37. It doesn't matter. And you asked someone, but why does gravity pull things together? And they told you with confidence that mass curves space-time and objects follow the curvature. And something in you wasn't satisfied, not because you didn't understand the answer, but because the answer didn't actually answer the question you asked. That feeling wasn't confusion. That wasn't you being slow. That was you bumping with your bare hands into the actual edge of what physics answers. You asked why. Physics answered how, more precisely than before. Those are different questions, and the gap between them is not a gap that physics is trying to close. It's a gap physics has learned to live with, mostly quietly. Description, explanation. They're not the same word, and they're not the same thing. Most of what we call scientific explanation is actually very good description, and for most purposes, that's enough. But not if you're asking what I think you're actually asking. Newton understood this. I think he understood it better than most people who came after him. His law of gravitation was, and still is, one of the most powerful equations ever written. Point two, masses in space tell me their masses and the distance between them, and Newton's equation tells you the force between them. It works for apples falling from trees. It works for planets orbiting the sun. It works for predicting the paths of space probes billions of miles from Earth. And Newton had absolutely no idea what gravity was. He wasn't being modest, he was being precise. He wrote in Latin in the Principia, hypothesis non fingo. I feign no hypotheses. I'm not going to invent a story about what's causing this. I'm giving you the rule. The cause is beyond what I can reach. For 200 years, that equation was the pinnacle of human scientific achievement, the most useful tool in the history of science, and it described a force that nobody could explain. Working and understanding are not the same thing. Newton proved that first. Then Einstein arrived and everyone felt the mystery dissolve. General relativity replaced Newton's invisible force with a physical picture. Mass curves, space-time, and objects follow the curvature. Suddenly you had a mechanism. You could visualize it. A bowling ball on a rubber sheet bending the surface, making a marble roll toward it. That feels like an explanation. It really does. I understand why people received it that way. But ask the next question. What is space-time? Not what it does. What is it? What does it mean for space-time to curve? What is it made of that allows it to bend? When we say the presence of mass distorts the geometry of the universe, what is the substance of that geometry? Nobody knows. Einstein didn't replace the mystery. He traded one unexplained thing for a deeper, stranger, more mathematically beautiful, unexplained thing. The physics got dramatically more accurate. The territory remained unknown. Better maps, same unknown country. And the maps kept getting better, which is extraordinary. And also, if you think about it carefully, a little suspicious. Quantum mechanics is where the divorce between description and reality became impossible to ignore. Here are the credentials. Quantum mechanics is the most precisely tested theory in the history of science. Its predictions match experiment to 1 part in a billion. Some calculations in quantum electrodynamics, the quantum theory of light and matter, are accurate to more decimal places than any other prediction in any field of human knowledge. It's not wrong. It's the opposite of wrong by any empirical measure. And nobody agrees on what it means. The theory has this object in it called the wave function. It's a mathematical description of a quantum system, a particle, or a group of particles. The wave function evolves smoothly, deterministically, according to the Schrödinger equation. Beautiful, well-defined mathematics. But when you measure the system, when you actually look, the wave function collapses. The smooth, spread-out probability distribution suddenly becomes a single definite outcome. Here's the problem. The theory doesn't tell you what counts as a measurement. It doesn't tell you what physically happens during collapse. It doesn't tell you where the boundary is between the quantum world, where wave functions spread and interfere, and the classical world you and I live in, where things have definite positions. The instruction that practicing physicists actually use: shut up and calculate. Don't ask what it means. Use the machinery. Get the right answer. Go home. That instruction works spectacularly well. It's just not the same thing as understanding. The weirdest part, and I want you to really sit with this, is that particles don't have definite positions before you measure them. Not we don't know the position. Not the position exists, but we can't detect it without disturbing it. The position, in the quantum mechanical sense, doesn't exist before measurement. There is no fact of the matter about where the electron is. There's a probability distribution over where it might turn out to be. This sounds like philosophy. It's not. It's experimental physics. John Bell, in 1964, derived a mathematical theorem that tests precisely this question. If particles had definite positions that we simply couldn't access, hidden variables as they're called, then experiments would have to produce certain statistical patterns. He worked out the math. The experiments were done, starting in the 1970s and refined continuously since then. The statistical patterns Bell required for hidden variables don't appear. The universe doesn't produce them. The position doesn't exist in the way we normally mean the word exist. Reality at the quantum level doesn't behave like a collection of things with properties. It behaves like a collection of potentials, possibilities that become actual only in the context of interaction. That's not my interpretation. That's what the data says. You can be uncomfortable with it. The data doesn't care. Now, here's the part that I find genuinely strange, not just interesting, but strange in a way that hasn't left me. The models work. They work with absurd, almost offensive precision. We build a theory using mathematical objects, wave functions, virtual particles, curved manifolds that we cannot directly observe. We manipulate these objects according to rules, and the answers come out matching the universe with 10 decimal places of accuracy. Why does that work? Are the wave functions real? Is space-time curvature real in the sense that a chair is real? Are virtual particles, those fleeting mathematical entities that pop in and out of existence in quantum field theory, are they actually there, or are they just useful fictions in a calculating machine that happens to produce correct outputs? Physicists argue about this, seriously, genuinely argue. There's no consensus. Eugene Wigner wrote an essay in 1960 called The Unreasonable Effectiveness of Mathematics in the Natural Sciences. The title is the thesis. He was pointing at something that should bother you. Mathematics is a human invention or discovery, depending on your philosophy, developed largely for aesthetic and logical reasons, often with no thought of application. And then it turns out to describe physical reality with a precision that seems wildly improbable. Why does the universe obey equations? Why are those equations mathematical in nature? Why does mathematics, something that lives in human minds, map onto the structure of physical reality? That question has been sitting on the table since 1960. It doesn't have a physics answer. It might not have any answer at all. But it's real and it's pointed at something important. Feynman's personal position on all of this was unusual, and I think it was courageous in a way that's easy to underestimate. He didn't think physicists understood quantum mechanics. He included himself in that assessment. He said, and this is one of my favorite things anyone has ever said about science, I think I can safely say that nobody understands quantum mechanics. He said that having won the Nobel Prize in Physics for his work in quantum electrodynamics, think about what that takes. Most people, having achieved mastery of a subject at the highest level, want to declare understanding. They want the credential to mean comprehension. Feynman held both things simultaneously. I can use this machinery with more skill than almost anyone alive, and I don't understand what it means. He was comfortable not knowing, not as a temporary state to be solved, but as the permanent condition of honest engagement with deep questions. He found it freeing, genuinely, not performatively freeing, because it meant he wasn't defending a position. He was exploring. The willingness to use a model without claiming to understand its deep nature, to hold the tool and the mystery at the same time, that's not weakness. That's scientific maturity. Most people can't do it. The discomfort of not knowing drives them toward false certainty faster than almost anything else. This changes how you should hear every scientific explanation you've ever been given. When someone tells you that science explains something, pause for a second and ask, does it describe or does it explain? Evolution is one of the most powerful, well-evidenced theories in the history of science. It describes with extraordinary detail how species change over time, how variation and selection produce complexity, how the diversity of life on Earth came to be. That's real. That's solid. I'm not questioning it. But evolution doesn't explain why the universe is the kind of place where replication, heredity, and mutation are possible. It doesn't explain why chemistry exists in a way that allows self-reproducing molecules. It takes those facts as given and explains what happens from there. Neuroscience maps brain states onto mental states with increasing precision. Activity in this region correlates with that experience. Damage to this structure produces that deficit. The correlations are real, but the map from physical process to subjective experience, why it feels like something to see the color red, why there's something it's like to be you and not just a biological machine running processes in the dark, that question, the hard problem of consciousness, remains completely open. This isn't an attack on science. I want to be clear about that. The distinction between description and explanation isn't a crack that lets mysticism in. It's the thing that keeps science honest. It's what prevents you from confusing knowing the rules with understanding the game. And confusing description for explanation doesn't make you smarter. It makes you more confident in things you don't actually understand, which is a very different and more dangerous thing. So where does that leave you? Physics works. Let's be completely clear about that. It works extraordinarily well. GPS satellites, semiconductors, MRI machines, lasers, nuclear reactors, all of it built on physical theories that describe the world with staggering precision. That achievement is real and it's enormous and it deserves every bit of respect it gets. But it works the way a key works in a lock. The key opens the door every time, reliably, predictably. And it does that without explaining why the universe is the kind of place that has locks, without explaining why the key has the shape it has, without touching the question of why there's a door at all. Why is there something rather than nothing? That's not a religious question. It's a genuine question about the foundations of existence, and physics doesn't have an answer. Physics starts with something. It describes what that something does. It doesn't reach back to the moment before the rules existed and explain why there are rules. Why does the universe follow laws? Why are those laws consistent across space and time? Why are they mathematical? These aren't questions that physics has tried and failed to answer. They're questions that sit outside what physics was designed to do. The tool is real. The tool has limits. Those are both true at the same time. And here's what Feynman actually meant. What I think he was trying to give you, not take away. He wasn't warning you away from physics. He wasn't saying the equations are useless or that science is a lie. He was warning you not to mistake the map for the territory, not to pick up a description of the world and call it the world itself, not to look at a model of reality, however accurate, however beautiful, however useful, and think you're looking at reality. Because the moment you do that, you stop being curious. You've answered the question. You've closed the loop. And the universe, the actual universe, the thing the map is pointing at, stays unknown. Sitting with that is hard, genuinely hard. The human mind hates open loops. It fills silence with stories. It converts uncertainty into false confidence because uncertainty is uncomfortable and confidence feels like solid ground. But the solid ground is an illusion. And knowing it's an illusion, holding that, staying in it, letting the questions stay questions, that might be the most honest relationship you can have with the universe. The map is extraordinary. The map is the greatest collective human achievement in the history of thought. And you're not standing on the map. You're standing on whatever the map is pointing at. And nobody, not Newton, not Einstein, not Feynman, not anyone alive today, knows with certainty what that is. That's not a failure. That's the actual situation, and it's worth knowing.